you and your wife come to a place where at least you can start rebuilding. But while you're rebuilding professionally, we have all been there. Stars rise, but it's nothing like new screams. It's nothing like being that new kid on the block. It's nothing like the new fanfare. You're on the other side of your career. The records are not selling like they once did. And then in '04, you get audited by the IRS. That's something that we have heard far too often. It's far too familiar when it comes to entertainers and celebrities. How much money did you actually owe the IRS at that point?
How much did they say I owe them, or how much did I actually owe them?
It's a great question.
They're not the same thing.
Yeah, they're very good. How much did they say you owe them, and how much did you actually owe them?
Okay, so let me give you some, you can use this as a teaching tool. If we were doing a master class, okay? I'm about to give you IRS 101. IRS is gangster. They got a system that is legally the system that we must all function under as good citizens of these United States of America. The IRS basically said I owed them $1.7 million. $1.7 million. But I'm about to put you up on game so I can show you how you get to 1.7 million. And I'm gonna give you some loose figures, Prez, and let your mathematicians out there kind of figure out where the inconsistencies are, but to be able to understand the story. One year, my wife and I are hurting for some cash. We're songwriters, we're producers, so we go to the label and we're like, hey, we need about 50 G's so we can do, we need to cover these bills. We've overextended ourselves here. Can you float us 50K? The label's like, nah, we can't float you 50K, but what we'll do instead is we'll do a production deal with you. You give us 3 records and we'll give you 50,000 to turn in these 3 records. So it becomes a business transaction. It's a deal. And a deal, good or bad, is what you agree to. So great. We take the 50K. I bring in that 50. When I take in 50, I really need 50. But when that 50 comes in, the person that was watching over our finances at the time didn't take out the taxes that come along with receiving $50,000. So if you would imagine, when you get $50,000, just say about 11,000 of that 50,000 is supposed to go to the government. Okay? I owe the government $11,000. But the government, or the IRS, they don't tell you that when you miss paying your taxes. So if my guy, you ever hear him say have lawyers to watch over your lawyers and accountants to watch over your accountants? My accountant misses an $11,000 payment of taxes. And so rather than the government say, hey, you owe us $11,000, the government never does that, because the government by law has a penalty of 11% a day when taxes are delinquent. So if I owe you $11,000, right? My account goes into default because I don't pay the $11,000 in taxes. What happens is now when that account goes into default, there is an 11% tax a day of interest that is tied onto the $11,000. If you can do math, that comes to $1,100 a day. So Prez, what happens is, if the government is now getting $1,100 every single day in interest, why would I tell you to pay your taxes? Why not wait 2 or 3 years? And then 2 or 3 years later, they come to the table and they say, hey, you owe us $1.7 million. How in the world can I owe you $1.7 million? Well, because you didn't pay $11,000, you didn't pay the $11,000. The penalty on the $11,000 is $1,100 every single day, and $1,100 every single day for 365 days, 365 days, 365. That amounts start to go up into the hundreds of thousands and the millions. And because it's interest, if you go back and say, hey, can I pay you a portion of it? Can I pay you $11,000? Can I pay you what I actually owed you from the beginning without the interest? No, you can't. We want all the interest. We want everything. So I technically owe the government $1.7 million, but I didn't owe the government $1.7 million more than anybody else. That when you look at the news and they say, Wesley Snipes owes the government, he's in debt to the IRS for $20 million. No, he's not. Somewhere in his camp, somebody on the accounting side missed a movie payment, and they missed something for $50,000 or $75,000. Something in taxes was missing. It went into default at 11% a day. Now my man is getting charged, you know what I'm saying, $7,500 a day. They let it go for 3 or 4 years, and then they come when they can hit you and say you owe us $20 million. Every major actor or entertainer that's ever been through that type of scenario, I can almost guarantee you that it wasn't because they just said, I'm not going to pay my taxes. It was because somebody in their team got faulty with it, and it got greasy, and the system is what the system is.
Wow. And what a master. You laid that out perfectly, because a lot of people just see that top line number and they think, hey, these people, they're not about their business. They got these big checks. They went on a spending spree. They weren't responsible. And they figured, hey, if the government catches up to me, I'll deal with it when it happens. People don't realize something as simple as $11,000 3-4 years later can turn into $1.7 million.
Facts.
All right. Were you able to negotiate with them and get that down? Maybe have some of the interest removed or some of the penalties removed? Ultimately, how much did you wind up paying them? And if you needed to begin with Def Jam to float you $50,000, I gotta believe that you weren't sitting on whatever y'all negotiated for you to just pay them off. So how'd you end up paying them?
I paid them in flesh. I paid them in years of time. I paid them in bankruptcy. I paid them in intellectual properties. So I did publishing deals where I resold and gave away my music catalog in exchange for freedom.
Okay, stop there for a second. You have a vast music catalog. When you say you resold, gave away, are we talking about all of the major hits that you and I covered throughout this interview?
Every song that we've talked about, anything that was under my publishing deals, I did publishing deals to everything that was in my intellectual property underneath my jurisdiction, the portions that belong to me. I did a publishing deal that was probably in the area of about $600-something thousand. And I never even saw the check. I literally took the check of the publishing deal and gave it right over to the IRS, was still indebted for the rest of the money, and I had to file bankruptcy.
Okay, where do you stand now with the IRS?
Oh, me and the IRS, we good now. Listen, after 11 years, we are very good now.
Please tell me you got a new accountant.
Thank God. Thank God. That was a tough one to swallow, man. But once again, the process of, I heard people use, Biggie say stash more cash than Burt Padell. For a while, I had Burt Padell as an accountant. And I got to tell you, at that time, it was probably one of the best decisions that I ever made, because everything financially was very, very pristine and very, very clean and very, very well taken care of. It was a lot of times when I tried to bring aboard people I'm trying to give a chance to or give an opportunity to, those were the times when I ended up, it came back to bite me.